Hey guys, how's it going? It's Danconia and welcome back to the Overwatch Transfer Roundup. So it's been a little bit of extra time since we did a transfer roundup, and that's for various reasons when I wasn't well last week, and also because there hasn't been that much going on in the transfer market because, well, we're in the grips of the playoffs and Contenders now, so those teams aren't making many changes. There are a few people that didn't make it to the playoffs that are making changes, and obviously in the Overwatch League we've seen a few changes, but that came more previously. We've covered them in previous videos, and that people are not making too massive changes now. But it's possible that we will see more changes going forward in the next couple of weeks, because obviously we are on a break for Overwatch League right now. But we left off last time with Shockwave coming in at Vancouver Titans, so we discussed that. So we'll start off from our next incoming transfer, and this is the Canadian DPS player Razor, who was with Revival. He is now inactive at Revival and on loan at Third Impact. And this seems to be something a bit common with Revival players. There's another one coming up in a minute, that they are now inactive at Revival and on loan at a team that is currently in the playoffs of Contenders in NA. Obviously Revival didn't make it, so these players, if they've got a chance, they would like to try and give it a go at that level. And we'll see if any of these transfers become permanent. But carrying on from there, we have a movement in Europe. This is the Finnish DPS player Korea? I hope I'm saying that right. He has left the Angry Titans and will no longer be assigned. Angry Titans are obviously going through a bit of a rough patch right now. They didn't make it into the Contenders playoffs for Season 1 of 2020. And we'll see if they can build a roster that can get them there for Season 2. Because it's been a rough one for the former Contenders champions, and we will see if they can turn it around. There will probably be some more roster jigabouts with Angry Titans in the coming future. But next up, we move over to Paradigm Shift. This is the DPS player Yi Fang, who is from New Zealand. He was a substitute at Paradigm Shift, and now he will no longer be assigned. Obviously, Paradigm Shift weren't getting enough use out of him to grant him a contract and stuff like that, so they've decided to move him on and he'll be looking for a team. But in place, they've actually brought in a permanent player. So this is the Singapore DPS player Eurus, who is coming into Paradigm Shift, not as a substitute, but as a permanent Paradigm Shift player. So we wish him all the best, and I do hope he does well at Paradigm Shift. Moving on and back to America, or an American tank player, shall we say. This is Vita. He was at Ex-Oblivione. He will no longer be at Ex-Oblivione. Obviously, Ex-Oblivione is in EU, so it's not American, but it is an American tank player. He will no longer be Ex-Oblivione. He will be unassigned and will be looking for another team, but definitely in America this time. We have a signing at Revival. This is the unassigned American tank player Moopy, who will be moving in at Revival. There's been a lot of revolving doors in NA Contenders recently, with the second win thing and Vancouver Titans, and there's been a lot of moving in and out of Revival, a lot of moving in and out of Sky Foxes, which no longer exists now. So there's been a lot of moving around in NA Contenders, and hopefully it can find a bit more stability going into Season 2 and these playoffs, obviously. But then we have a big announcement, and this is the entire organization of Meta Athena in South Korea being let go, and the Meta Athena disbanding. So this is the coaches Zun and Fickle, the manager Alwayzuv, the support Named in Half, the tank players Takoyaki, Jasper, and In-hyuk, and the DPS players Tampa, Flora, and Alpha Yi. They've all been let go from Meta Athena, and Meta Athena are now no longer going to be competing in Korean Contenders, and that is a massive loss, because go back to the Apex days, and there are very few teams remaining from those Apex days, and now there's only one. It's Runaway. The only team that remains from Apex now is Runaway. Meta Athena was one of those teams that was carrying on from Runaway, but carrying on from Apex, but in some way or another, all of the Apex teams have disappeared now. You remember the names like LW Blue, Lunatic High, obviously. There was a bunch of names in Apex that are no longer here, and Meta Athena is now going to join those ranks. And it's a sad, sad day. It's a sad, sad day to see a team like that go. They never really grasped it this season, and yeah, they've decided to pack it in Korean Contenders, and that's it's a great shame. Hopefully, we can see some of these great old teams back again. But moving on, and we have another shame, and this is the Dutch DPS player Facility. Facility was really good at the World Cup for the Dutch, and I think he's really been hard done by. He hasn't really got any chance at Overwatch League. He's been battered around Contenders, going from team to team, but he was unassigned and now he's deciding to retire. And I think that's a great loss. I think Facility was a very, very good player. And he is a player that criminally never got a chance at the Overwatch League, and I think should have got a chance at the Overwatch League. At least a chance, you know. So I think that's a really, really big shame. And I hope one day Facility can come back. But yeah, that's not brilliant. Anyway, moving on, and we have another retirement. This is a Taiwan support player in77. He was with Light Gaming in China, and he will now be retiring. Again, sad to see another player retiring, and there's a few of them in this video, but yeah, I'm sure Light Gaming will be looking for a replacement. Then we have some better news, so it's nice to move on to some good news, isn't it? This is the Dutch tank player Dans. He will be moving in at Oblivione. Obviously, they let go of Vita. We talked about that earlier in this video. Dans, he was at Sky Foxes previously, and Atlanta Academy and Phase 2. So, especially at Atlanta Academy, back when Atlanta Academy, just before they disbanded, it wasn't too good. Sky Foxes, I think Sky Foxes were just messed around way too much to really ever hit the ground. But Dans, I think, is a decent tank player, and I think Oblivione will get a lot of value from signing him on. But staying in the European region for a little bit, actually, we have another movement at Angry Titans. This is Knassen, the Swedish tank player. He's moving out of Angry Titans permanently and moving over to Disaster as a substitute. So this is another example of a player moving from a team that is not in playoffs into a team that is in playoffs. He may not get a game, he's only a substitute, but Disaster are in the playoffs for EU, and we will see if Knassen gets a chance to show his worth, sorry. And yes, this will be super interesting. But there's a movement at the British Hurricane. So their head coach Unter, who is Australian, or Unter, I should say, he is no longer with them. He is now an assistant coach at the Los Angeles Valiant. Los Angeles Valiant, in some way or another, they always have some link to the British. I don't know why. I think they've had a bunch of British coaches in the past, and now they're bringing in a coach for a British team. So this is a loss for the British Hurricane, but by the looks of their early results in the playoffs of Contenders, it's not going to affect them too much. The British Hurricane have got a very good roster, very good roster, and they've been dominating EU Contenders. So I can see why the LA Valiant have taken on Unter, and all the best to him. He's got his shot at the Overwatch League as assistant coach for the Valiant, and the Valiant are a team with a lot of potential. So yeah, I think that's a good pickup for the Valiant, and it's a loss for the British Hurricane, but I'm sure the British Hurricane can fight through that with the roster they've got. But sticking with it, we have a movement at Scion Esports. This is Nick, the Italian tank player, I should say. He is moving all the way to NA to go and play for Karasuno. Karasuno have a new logo now, so that kind of put me off. But Karasuno, I think they're in the playoffs for NA Contenders, and this will be a good addition. It's nice to see some Italian talent. That's actually not easy to say. It's nice to see some Italian talent knocking around the Overwatch Contenders scene. The more representation we can have, especially in different regions, the better it is. And this will be a loss for Scion Esports, but it'll be interesting to see how Nick does at Karasuno. But we're back at Revival again, and I said it's one of these weird transfer things. So this is Aspire, the American DPS player. He is still with Revival, but he is now inactive at Revival on loan at Triumph, which is quite ironic, because Revival and Triumph have been fighting it out against each other a lot this season, and Triumph have been coming out on top generally. But again, Triumph, a team in the playoffs, Revival, a team outside the playoffs. So yeah, you can kind of see the trend here. Players, when they get a chance, they want to be in the playoffs. But I think it's interesting that these players are still like sticking to these teams. They're still sticking to Revival. They haven't made the transfer permanent. So yeah, that's very, very interesting. But moving on, and we move over to South America now, where we see a move at Ignis 6. This is the Brazilian DPS player Grillo. He will no longer be at Ignis 6, and he will be retiring from Overwatch. Again, it's another retirement. It's unfortunate to see, and we wish him all the best for the future, and hopefully one day maybe he will come back and play Overwatch once more. Then we move over to the Overwatch League, because this is a super interesting one. So I don't know whether you remember the British tank player Numlocked. He's played for Great Britain, I think. He had time at the LA Valiant at one point as well, I think. He didn't really feature all that much, but he was also at the British Hurricane as well at some point. But he's been unassigned, and I've been wondering whether he was going to retire or stuff like that. But he's not going to. He's going to the Toronto Defiant as a coach. As a coach for tanks, which is very, very interesting. And I think that's a decent pickup for the Toronto Defiant. And it will enable them to focus coaching more on different roles. I think that will really help out Beast Halo, especially. So, yeah, Numlocked has a lot of experience, and I think that's a really good pickup for the Toronto Defiant. But this is a really nice one. So, remember the German tank player Moose? Now, he retired a little while ago, and it was a shame. He was with Notting Contenders, and it was all like he'd been battered around because he was at Clockwork Vendetta before that and stuff like that. And it's never nice to see people battered around teams, especially when they end up disbanding in the end. And he went and retired, but he's come back. He's now looking for a team, and so we've got a bit more of a German influx now in European contenders, or maybe NA contenders, depending on where he goes. So it's good to see Moose back, coming out of retirement. We don't often say people coming out of retirement, and I hope he finds a team in the near future. Then we have another move in Europe. This is the French support player Starboy, and he is currently still assigned with Dreadlords, but Dreadlords didn't make the playoffs. So he has moved over and gone over to Samsung Morning Stars to act as a stand-in while they take part in the playoffs, and I believe they have a match coming up against Sheer Cold, I think. So yeah, he's going to be able to feature in the playoffs, which he wouldn't have been able to with Dreadlords. Again, it's another one of those weird transfers like we've seen with a few with Revival, and yeah, it'll be super interesting to see how these teams do, and how these players do, I should say, and you never know, it might end up as a promotion opportunity for these players, so it's an interesting one. But I'm sure this is the one you've already heard of. This is the British DPS player Sideshow. Obviously one of the best DPS players we've ever seen. He was currently unassigned. I really don't know why, but the Florida Mayhem have picked him up on a 14-day contract. I think this is a fantastic signing. He will definitely come in as Florida Mayhem's #1 DPS player. That's without a doubt. He's miles better than Yaki and BQB. And also something else to say about the Florida Mayhem is that Sire player is currently having medical issues, and that's why we haven't seen him for a while. So this is a massive pickup for the Florida Mayhem, and this possibly makes them the best team in the league. Absolutely. I mean, with Sideshow leading the DPS line of the Florida Mayhem, I really don't see anything standing in their way now. I mean, they would have won that game against the Shock if Sideshow had been available. So, yeah, I expect them to nail this down to a main contract, and I think Sideshow will have a very long career at the Florida Mayhem. But moving on, and we have another retirement, and this is the South Korean tank player Creature. So Creature was most recently at Lucky Future, and Lucky Future, there's an interesting case around the Lucky Future team that is currently in Korea, and it might need a video of its own, because yeah, there's been some going-ons, and they haven't done as well as they wanted to, and there's been a lot of expenditure. But Creature, the tank player, was unassigned and is now going to be retiring from Overwatch. He will no longer be competing. And to round out this video, we remember we talked about Stitch and Janu in the last one. Janu got nailed down to a long-term contract at the Washington Justice. Well, we were waiting on Stitch. He was on a 14-day contract. He's now on a long-term contract at the Washington Justice. We didn't expect anything else. When the Washington Justice got hold of the two 14-day contracts for Stitch and Janu, it would have been criminal if they didn't nail it down. And they have. So this is two massive additions, long-term additions for the Washington Justice. And if they can just get a main tank, I think, the justice will improve with time, especially when they get this whole team together in one place. I'm wondering whether the justice, it's a bit late now, but moving to this all-Korean setup that I think they're trying to do, maybe if it had happened earlier, they perhaps would have gone over to the Asia region and based themselves there. I don't know, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what happens. But Stitch and Jano, well, in this video, massive pickup for the Washington Justice. But I think the biggest pickup in this whole video is definitely Sideshow for the Florida Mayhem. One of the biggest transfers of the entire season, and I think he will make a massive difference to this Mayhem side and push them on to being the best team in the league, without a doubt. But for now, thank you guys so much for watching this video. If you liked it, give it a like, subscribe if you're new, and I'll see you in the next video. See you then.